I was abducted by my abuser after I decided to leave. He coerced me into a car and then proceeded to take my phone and take me across state borders. And getting abducted was definitely the final straw. And I was pretty young. I was 19 when I came into this relationship. I know now that you're not fully developed mentally. There were a lot of red flags, but I was either too naive or I just didn't want to see them. Over time, just that constant erosion of self made me stop trusting my own instincts. It is an ashes to beauty moment. And it did take a long time to regain that trust to where I could trust people again. I do fully believe that because of what I went through, it has made me stronger. I couldn't make any decisions for myself. I didn't expect how much trauma still lived in my body. Just not being able to open up to people. I physically could not talk about the situation without feeling like I was going to shut down because it was just so hard and traumatic.
An exploration of trauma, transformation, and triumph. Your healing starts here. On Through the Trauma podcast, we don't just talk about transformation, we ignite it. This season, I'm inviting you to something extraordinary. It's called the burn ceremony. Picture this, a guided, powerful ritual where we symbolically burn away all of the old versions of yourself that's no longer serving you. This is not just a ceremony, it's a rebirth. A chance to let the flames of transformation forge you into your new identity. And whether you're ready to break old chains or step into your next level of unstoppable, this is your moment. Join us for the burn ceremony and experience a shift like never before. Head on over to our website at www.burnitceremony.com and claim your spot, because this year, we're going to rise from the ashes together. And we are back with another episode of Through the Trauma podcast. I am Amber Larkin, your host, and today I have with me a guest that is going to share with us her experience through abuse and abduction and just what that has been like. She is an author and she's written a book that has not only helped her through this process, but will help other people as well. So, Alysha, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with us.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored to be here. Thank you for all your work. It's just a privilege to be here in this space and for opening up the conversation about trauma. I just love what you're doing here. Like you said, my name is Alysha Lee, and I'm a writer, an educator, and the author of a memoir, Everything I Might Have Missed. It does explore the life during and after an abusive marriage. And I just want to say up front that I'm not a clinician or a therapist. I'm speaking here as someone who has lived through abuse, and my qualification comes solely from experience, from navigating that emotional and physical abuse from the inside, from surviving it, and from doing the long, quiet work of healing afterward.
Well, that's powerful, because what makes you an expert on something is that you've actually lived through it. And not that anyone would ever want to become an expert on abuse through living through it, but sometimes life hands us a deck of cards that we have to deal with. And I'm sure we'll get into your story and we'll talk more about how you ended up there and all of the things that go along with that. But I do know that with abuse, it's not one of those things typically that you see right off. It's something that is lived through a little bit of time before you actually even realize that it's abuse, before you even call it abuse, before you even know that it is abusive. So I'm excited to get into your story because so many people, I think probably more than we even know, go through this because it's a silent thing. Sometimes people wear it with bruises and things like that, but sometimes people don't. You don't wear it and people don't know about it. So I appreciate what you're doing by sharing this, because each story empowers more people that are in abuse to, one, call it abuse, to two, become aware of the resources that it takes to remove yourself from the situation of abuse, because no one deserves that.
Yeah, exactly what you said. I mean, for me, for years, I didn't even have the language to describe what was happening to me. And like you said, I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm in an abusive relationship with a narcissist who's constantly gaslighting me. I didn't even know at the time that gaslighting was a thing or anything in my vocabulary. I just knew that I felt smaller and anxious all the time and I was disconnected from myself. And like many survivors, unfortunately, you just adapt and it just kind of becomes your day to day. We just have to learn how to keep the peace and move forward. And of course, in that process, I minimized my needs and survival was the only thing on my mind.
Yeah, and narcissistic abuse is sometimes the psychological impact that comes with that makes it even harder because it's hard to pinpoint. It's hard to put your finger on this is what this is until sometimes it takes someone else sharing with you that, hey, that's actually abuse. That is mental and emotional, financial, or whatever type of abuse that you're experiencing. But it's so covert, it's so secretive, and to the point that the person who's being abused begins to feel like they are going crazy. You know, the
Yeah.
gaslighting happens and then you start question yourself like, is this something that is abuse or is this something that I'm overreacting? And when you get told you're overreacting, then that also doesn't help.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And especially that cognitive dissonance. I mean, just the fact that two things can be true at the exact same time. And I think a lot of survivors will relate to this is that this person who's abusing me loves me or says they love me, but at the same time, they're harming me or hurting me or making me feel small or anxious all the time. And so I think your brain just naturally, because we are wired to survive, tries to make sense of that and like, okay, well, yes, this person is hurting me, but is it really as bad as I'm making it out to be? Or other people have it worse than I have it, or my abuser is sometimes kind to me, so maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm overreacting or I'm making a mountain out of a molehill or making something bigger than it actually is. So I think just our body just naturally will try to make sense of things that don't make sense. And that's where, like you said, we feel like we're going crazy because two things that aren't lining up with each other are happening at the same time. And we don't know how to do anything but try to make sense of what's happening.
Can you share a little bit about how you got into this situation, the abuse situation? Because I know a lot of women get involved in an abusive situation. And I mean, it's very nice at first. In fact, it's like
Mhm.
the love bombing happens and there's so much gratitude. And it's just like, this is the love of my life. And you fall so fast in love with this person. And I don't know if that was your experience, but can you talk a little bit about how this all started?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was pretty young. I was 19 when I came into this relationship. I was actually 16 when we started our relationship, but then I was 19 when I married this person. And I think you do feel, well, one, you're so young. And I know now that you're not fully developed mentally. And there's just a lot of other contributing factors and just insecurities about certain things. And so there was a lot of things that I think just being young that were working against me, but also you're right. I mean, you think that you experience love. I mean, no matter what age you are, you feel like you're experiencing love and that this person loves you. And I think in my case, there were a lot of red flags, but I was either too naive or I just didn't want to see them. But I did have a lot of people close to me that saw some of these red flags. And it's something that you can't necessarily point your finger at first. It begins pretty subtly, like control that is disguised as concern or criticism that was framed as help. And emotional withdrawal that is used as punishment. And I think over time, just that constant erosion of self made me kind of stop trusting my own instincts. And I started believing that I was the version of myself that I was told by this person that I was.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Let me ask you this question. Do you consider yourself an empath? Because I know a lot of times narcissists are automatically attracted to empathetic people.
Oh my goodness. That is so funny you asked that because I've actually always considered myself an empath before I even knew that it was a thing. I would just see people. I remember as a little girl, like seeing people on the street and they looked a little run down or like they needed help. And I just remember my like little girl heart just aching. Like I feel so bad for that person. I wish I could help them. I wish there was more that I can do for them, or even just being at school. And, there's always maybe a kid that is kind of sitting by himself, or he just looks like he doesn't fit in. And I just always remember feeling deeply emotional for that person, like, oh, I should go talk to that person. And it carried over into, high school and college, where we'd be in a group setting, and I could just tell without someone even saying anything that the person's going through a hard time. I should talk to them. And so yeah, I have always considered myself deeply empathetic and an empath.
Yeah, I know that that's usually the case. And if you look at the dynamics, you can kind of see why. Because empaths, they give a lot of compassion, a lot of consideration, like a lot of emotion towards somebody else. I'm an empath as well. And I know that for myself, I wear a lot of that emotion. I'll hear stories and then that bothers me for days
Yeah.
because I can't
Yeah.
do anything about it. And I remember myself, like, and I've talked about this on previous episodes, but I remember feeling like, why did God make me this way? Like, I thought it
Yeah.
was a curse for the longest. I was like, why did God curse me? Like, I felt like people ran over me and
Yeah.
took advantage of me. And I felt like it wasn't until God, I felt like He spoke to me and said,
Yeah.
Amber, this is a gift. You've been given a gift, but yes, you have to learn how to tailor it and polish it and use it
Hmm.
effectively because you do have to set boundaries. You can't allow people to just take control, which is a really hard thing because I think you and I can probably relate to this. I'm curious if you do relate to this, but you automatically want to trust the best in people. You want to see the best and you want to believe the best. So when someone tells you, I'm this way, I give to charity, I do these things, you believe those things because you wholeheartedly believe the best in people.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because I feel like sometimes it takes situations like abusive situations like this, or someone taking such advantage of you to where you start to doubt humanity.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of start then navigating through that. And what does that look like? I'm
Yeah.
curious your thoughts on this. Have you ever considered that possibly it takes someone like your ex and a situation that like this that you've gone through to strengthen you or to bring you to a place of where now you're on the other side of that much stronger?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. That is such an interesting fact that that's something that can completely tear you down, can strengthen you. But I do consider it an ashes to beauty moment. And, like being on the other side of abuse, I feel like unless you've experienced it, you won't understand this. But I remember so many people being like, well, why didn't you just leave? Like, how hard is it just to leave? Obviously, you were experiencing abuse and everyone saw it. Why didn't you just leave? And really, the truth is that people don't stay because they're weak. I mean, and I think you'll understand this, Amber. People stay because they're human and they want to believe that there's hope in the world and that people can change. And there's always other conflicting emotions like attachment or love. A lot of abusers still love people, will still love their abusers despite everything they're going through. And obviously, there's fear what's going to happen after I do leave, if I do leave. And sometimes it gets worse, that the abuse will get worse when and if you leave. And then obviously sometimes there's children involved, and I'm a believer as well. And so there's faith involved, and I believe in the sanctity of marriage, and you want things to work. And so I think that abuse doesn't necessarily erase overnight. Sometimes all those emotions, like obviously it'll complicate everything. I do believe that once you finally make the decision, and sometimes it's not just like I'm doing this today. I feel like sometimes the process of leaving can be a long process, and there's so many things to work through. But I do believe that it is an ashes to beauty moment. And it did take a long time to regain that trust to where I could trust people again. But I do fully believe that because of what I went through, it has made me stronger. And it does make me even more empathetic because I can see people that are experiencing this, and I know how to be the listening ear. I think a lot of times when we know someone that's going through abuse, the first thing that we want to do is like solve the problem for them and be the solution for them. But really what a lot of people that are experiencing this need is just a listening ear, or someone to tell them like they're valid and what they say matters, and that it's true, that they're not crazy, and they need to know that they're safe, that there is a safe spot for them, when and if they decide to leave. And instead of just going straight into fix it mode, a lot of people that are abused just want to hear that they're validated.
I totally agree. And it's a hard thing. And you're right. Until someone has actually walked in those shoes, it's really
Yeah.
hard to relate to, especially when it comes to narcissistic abuse. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, because the thing with the narcissistic abuse is a lot of times it's very covert and
Hmm.
you start to second guess yourself.
Yeah.
You have to understand, like if those that are listening, not you, because you do understand obviously,
Right.
but you have to understand that when that type of thing happens, that person is grooming you for years to make you do the thing that they want. And they will argue with you on purpose. There's things that they do on purpose to
Yeah.
to twist things where they can turn it around on you. Well, now you did this. It's your fault that this all's happening. And then what people can't understand until they've actually been in a relationship like that is that now I'm the one that caused this. They didn't cause this. I caused this. And it takes years sometimes for you to develop the confidence, I guess, is what the word I would use here is for years to discover I'm not doing this. This is not my fault.
Yeah.
You get to the point where you feel crazy. Like, am
Hmm.
I going crazy because the gaslighting and the love bombing and the ups and downs and the, you know, putting things and painting their own narrative with what you're doing, your actions, it takes years to determine that that's actually what's happening because you do want to believe the best in people. You want to think if I share my thoughts and feelings, this person's going to reciprocate my thoughts
Yeah.
and feelings.
Yeah.
But what you don't see is that they're mirroring you just so
Hmm.
they can get what they want and
Yeah.
basically suck your energy so they can feed off of your energy. And it's funny, I've done a lot of studying on narcissism. I was in a narcissistic relationship as well. And I thought long and hard coming out of that
Hmm.
circumstance because where did this all go wrong? Like, at what point did I lose myself? At what point did I lose my independence? At what
Yeah.
point did I become someone different? And it's really hard to pinpoint. It's hard to go back there and pinpoint exactly where that happened, but
Yeah.
it's a slow progress process that happens.
Hmm.
And I got to the point where when I come out of that, I couldn't look people in the eye. I had no self confidence whatsoever. I didn't trust myself to make any decisions.
Hmm.
I looked for validation in everything that I was doing. And
Hmm.
that makes it so hard because you
Yeah.
do lose yourself in that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that is so interesting. I definitely went through that where I couldn't make any decisions for myself. My abuser, actually, I left a couple times, which a lot of victims do. And I'll just give you a quick story, and you can read more about it in the book if you're interested. But the quick version was I was abducted by my abuser after I decided to leave. He coerced me into a car and then proceeded to take my phone and take me across state borders. And if you take a person across state borders without consent, it's abduction and it's a felony, and you can't do that. And then I was just living basically in this little apartment with him, and I had no access to the outside world. And there's obviously a whole story behind that. But when I did eventually make it out of that, and of course, I'm, just completely a shell of a person at this point. I have no will to even live or get up out of bed any day because I'm basically at the will of him, and I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess I deserve this, and I don't know what I did, but obviously I deserve this, and this is my life now, and there's no hope." And eventually I do make it out of that, and then I do start therapy. And I remember the very first day when I walked into the therapist's office. Well, first of all, she made me fill out a questionnaire, and you have to be within a certain range to be considered like healthy, mentally healthy. And I was like way, way above. It's basically 100%. Like I got all the wrong answers. And so there was a ton of work to be done, but there's two chairs in her office, and she was grabbing some paper and a pen. We were going to start talking, and she told me, just feel free to take a seat. And I kid you not, I stood there and looked at both of the chairs, and I said, well, which one? And she was like, "Oh, that is so interesting that even a simple decision like which chair to sit in, you can't even make because I'd been living with an abuser who made every decision for me and I was a shell of a person."
That's that I believe that to be true. I believe that you get to the point where you can't make even simple decisions. And it's a hard thing for people to realize, and it's a really hard thing to go through because those types of decisions you really should be able to make, but you don't. And I really struggle. I remember not being able to look people in the eye, and I really struggled with that because I wanted to build a business. And I was like, what makes people think they could trust me? I can't even look them in the eye. But it was a issue of feeling so self-conscious in myself that I couldn't do that. But and what another thing that people don't talk about is that it takes time to come back from that. It takes time to rebuild that confidence, to rebuild the fact that you have to consciously unwire or rewire the things that are going on in your brain. And people
Yeah.
don't realize how much that takes to undo that, depending on how long you were in an abusive situation. And I will say that I think abuse, whether it be physical or mental, emotional, or whatever type of abuse, it's hard because when you're living with an abuser, it's not just like a one time trauma. It's like a
Mhm.
constant, every day you're being abused. So it's like every day you're getting told these things
Mhm.
about yourself. Every day you're made to doubt yourself. So people don't understand that years of that begins to frame your mindset and who you are and your identity. And then when you come out of it, it's like, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know my place in the world. And it's a really hard place to be. And I think that I believe everybody needs therapy at some
Mhm.
level. But I
Right.
think coming out of an abusive situation specifically, you need therapy because you need someone to tell you, hey, you can trust yourself again. You always could trust yourself.
Right.
So what was that process like coming out of, you said you left several times, but coming
Mhm.
out of that abusive situation, what was the final straw?
Yeah. So, getting abducted was definitely the final straw. And then once I made it back home and I was safe and I started therapy, I mean, that's when the law got involved essentially because of how bad it was. And I got an attorney and got a restraining order, and there's a warrant out for his arrest because of what he had done. And at that point, it was like, well, I absolutely cannot stay married or in a relationship with this person. So then we filed the divorce, and that was pretty quick and easy because it was a clear case. And in Colorado, it's a no fault state. So he didn't even need to, I didn't even need to see him in a courtroom or anything. It was just something that could get done pretty quick and easy. But one of the things that I didn't expect even after all of that was said and done was how much trauma still lived in my body, not just all the memories and all the things that were constantly keeping me up at night. And even then it was like, okay, what did I do wrong? Could I have done something different? But it was actual trauma living in my body. And, understanding what happened on an intellectual degree is one thing, but understanding that my body was still triggered by certain things, like I'm talking like tight chest and like pulse racing and just constant like spinning thoughts and shutting down. And like you said, not being able to look people in the eyes and not being able to trust anyone because everyone was, what I thought was everyone was going to hurt me in one way or another. And just not being able to open up to people. I physically could not talk about the situation without feeling like I was going to shut down because it was just so hard and traumatic to even talk about it unless they had been walking through the whole thing with me, like my close friends and family. It's like I couldn't meet someone and start just talking about my abuse. It debilitated me. And then I finally started to understand through therapy and just my own work that wasn't necessarily weakness, even though I felt like it was at the time. That why is my body betraying me? I'm not in this relationship anymore. I'm safe now, but my body still thinks that I'm not safe. But that was just my nervous system doing its job because I had been in this abusive relationship for so long. My nervous system was still just on high alert. And so healing outside of therapy and all the other things that I had to work through. I mean, healing wasn't just like okay, I'm safe and I'm good now. I really did have to learn to listen to my body instead of fighting it when I felt like, oh, I'm going to shut down, but I'm going to power through. I just learned to say, okay, like I'm not feeling okay right now. And that's okay. I don't need to have this conversation right now. I don't trust this person right now, but maybe later I can, they can gain my trust, and not feeling like I had to change overnight or that my body had to be back to its normal state before the abuse overnight, that it was going to take a process because I still held all that trauma inside of me.
And that's very interesting because I do believe that the body holds trauma. And sometimes, if we don't understand how to let go of that, if we don't understand how to release it, then our bodies can store it and it can be stored for years. And I think that this is my heart and my passion, even behind this podcast, is that helping people understand that you have to learn to let go of that. There's multiple modalities that you can use. You don't have to use one specific modality. There is multiple things, whether it be talk therapy or it be EMDR or some form of emotional release, some things you can do on your own, just in your own time. But there has to be a release, because I believe there's a lot of people, I don't have statistics for this or anything, but a lot of people don't want to face that hard stuff. So when trauma happens and triggers resurface, what happens is they just stuff it. They just throw
Mhm.
it down, like stuff it, put a band aid on it, drink some alcohol or do some drugs, or,
Yeah.
whatever type of band aid they choose to get rid of that pain in the moment. And then it gets better because they've stuffed it. It's gone
Yeah.
into their body
Right.
somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's never really gone. It's there. And if we don't release it, that's where people have a lot of toxic reactions to things because of unhealed, that stagnant trauma that's been left in their body someplace. So I love how you just described getting to the place where you're like, it's okay. I can feel this for a moment. I can release this. And sometimes that's a long process. Sometimes it's as simple as like, hey, I'm gonna feel it and then release it. And then other times it's like you gotta do other things to release it. I believe if it's been stuck in your body for a long time, then you have to do multiple things to get rid of it. But that's the beauty of emotion. Whether it's a bad or a negative emotion or a positive emotion, we are alive, so we get to feel things. And I wish there was more teaching and education on how to manage emotions. How did you come to that wisdom of, I've got to just be able to release this? Where did you gather that from?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was through therapy and just self-discovery. And I did a lot of yoga as well at the time. And I felt like that mind body connection was really good for me. And again, it was just a way to release things. And then I mean, I still would get triggered. And I know triggered is kind of one of those words that's like, let's not say that word. But I started feeling like if I did feel like I was triggered in any way, that it wasn't necessarily a setback in my own healing, that it was just my body giving me information like, okay, I don't like this situation, or I'm not comfortable talking about that with this person, or I can't quite trust this person just yet, but maybe we'll get there. And so I didn't think of that as weakness. I thought of it as just my body again giving me information. And then another thing is kind of like what you were saying. I mean, healing doesn't happen overnight, and it's so layered, right? So every day we can try something new and we can get a little bit closer to healing. And I really just had to learn how to live in my body again. I mean, a lot of it I think was just trusting my own instincts and getting back to square one, like, okay, this is my body, like I have control over it. I'm allowed to feel what I'm allowed to feel. I don't have to explain it. I think a lot of times we feel like we need to explain or we need to articulate. And there's just so much that I couldn't explain or articulate. I just knew it didn't feel right, or that I needed more time, or that there was more healing involved. I mean, if you think of like a beautiful sunset, you can't like magnify or quantify that. You just know like this is beautiful and this feels right, and this feels good. And so just learning those little tricks from me, knowing that even if I couldn't explain or articulate or quantify what I was feeling, if something felt a little off, then I was gonna take a step back. If it felt good and my body was giving me the okay, then I would be like, okay, this is maybe a good thing.
So having gone through that yourself and you use talk therapy, right? What
Hmm.
was like with a therapist.
Yeah.
Would you, if someone else was going through that, would you recommend that path to someone else? Or what are your thoughts? Or if someone come to you and said, "Hey, I'm struggling through this right now. I don't know how to heal from it." What advice would you give them?
Yeah. I mean, for me, talk therapy worked really well because I was really young at the time and it was hard for me to find people that I could trust. And I was just so scarred and it just felt like a really safe place. I think as long as you feel safe with a person talking about, whatever you've gone through or what you're experiencing, I think that is a great path. And I always recommend just talking it out and like finding someone that you can have an honest conversation with. Again, I mean, a lot of times you'll go through things and as a victim, just not understand at all like how this happened or why this happened, or none of this makes sense and none of the pieces go together. But just being able to have a listening ear to kind of talk about it just makes such a huge difference. And again, kind of going back to what I said in the beginning, finding someone, whether it is a therapist or a close friend, someone that you feel safe with, but that isn't necessarily trying to fix you, right? Just someone that's going to let you talk and someone that's going to validate your feelings and let you know that, like, yeah, okay, you're not crazy. Like, this did happen and your feelings are real. Do you think that that was okay that he yelled at you because you made tacos instead of spaghetti one night? Do you think that was okay? And just someone that will not necessarily like judge you or pick a side per se, but will just kind of ask the right questions that get you thinking a little bit more about what's really happening and what you're experiencing.
Yeah. Talk therapy is probably one of the most common things, like when we think of therapy. There are other types of therapy out there, but I'm always curious to know what works for different people. I've had guests sit on the podcast before and they've said, talk therapy didn't work for me, but it's always
Uh-huh.
interesting to hear different people's opinions. And my advice to anyone listening would be like, find that modality that works best for you. Because
Yeah.
if you try talk therapy and that doesn't work, then don't give up. Like keep going until you find the thing that does work because
Yeah.
everybody deserves healing. What advice that you have about finding the right therapist? Because sometimes that's a process in and of itself is trying to find the right person. And
Yeah.
narcissism specifically is kind of a you kind of have to know about narcissism to really give advice on it, I feel like, because sometimes it's hard to talk about to pinpoint exactly what has happened, I guess, for lack of a better way of describing that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I was pretty young when this happened. And so my family was actually the one who found my therapist. And I was pretty like mad about it at first. Like I didn't feel like I needed it or I didn't want to and was just obstinate. But then I went and I had that experience with my therapist who was, that first day was like, wow, we have a lot of work to do. And she gave me like a pile of books. I mean, she could probably see when I walked in that just from having a quick conversation that I was like a textbook, narcissistic abuse scenario. And she gave me a bunch of books to read. And so I was kind of doing work on my own as well. We would meet once a week and she gave me materials to look into and read. And so I started kind of figuring out where I was and like what was happening while, in between. Cause I think a lot of people get stuck on the fact like, how am I supposed to, if I meet with a person once a week, it feels like I'm starting over every time, or like there's not really much, that you can accomplish when you're only talking with a person once a week. And do they even know me at this point? And so I think just the fact that she was giving me, I guess, homework while we were away, and I was just doing a ton of reading and figuring stuff out on my own. I think that really helped. But even then, I mean, you'll love her, Amber, if you ever read my book, but I just feel like she did not give up on me. Like there were so many times where even writing the memoir, I was like, oh my goodness, like I was kind of snippy, or I was kind of a bit of a punk. And, I was young, and we just had this relationship where she would just let me be who I was that day. And if I was going to be snippy, or if I was going to say things off the cuff, and she would just let me be that person. And she just kind of became this second, like, advocate for me, even though our relationship was always very professional. Just knowing that someone else was in my corner, and she was through, well, it wasn't a linear, like, okay, I'm in therapy and now I'm like this amazing person and I'm on the up and up. And I went through a lot. I spiraled out of control for a little bit, even after I left the relationship. Again, I was pretty young. I didn't know how to articulate. I had a lot of insecurities. I had trust issues. I got involved with just like the wrong people for a period of time, and I just kind of spiraled. I'm going to be quite frank and honest, and she just stood with me the whole time, and no judgment, and let's just get through this. And okay, like, what did you do this week, or what's going on in your life this week? And so I don't know. I mean, I wish everyone could have a therapist like her, and I do understand that it is hard to find the right therapist. For me, it worked, I think, just because she didn't give up on me, I think was the biggest thing. And I know not everyone is in a position where they will find someone like her. I just think she was really doing her job, but also saw beyond that, that I was still kind of a kid, and I just needed someone to walk me through life a little bit without being judgmental.
That's beautiful. So, where are you at now? Like, do you feel like you are healed? Do you feel like healing is a consistent journey that you're going to always be on? Where do you think you are now?
Yeah. It does feel like it's always a bit of a journey, but at the same time, I know that I can say that I've healed from the situation because I can talk about it openly and not get the racing chest, the racing pulse and the tight chest. And I can talk about it without feeling strong emotions. And again, I think writing the memoir was very cathartic. In the process, I learned a lot about me, and I was able to articulate things that had happened. I do feel like, because I am in a healthy relationship, I've been married to my husband for, gosh, almost 12 years this summer. So we've been together for a while, and with that comes obviously trust that you're building with a person. And we have three little girls, and I just couldn't imagine my life any other way. But I do always feel like I when I first meet people, that I want to be a little bit weary about who they are. It takes a little bit longer to get in my inner circle, I guess, because of what I went through. But at the same time, I think that I have healed from the experience.
Yeah. I'm just always curious with the different people how they see that. Personally, when I look at my own self, like I do think I guess my experience has been where a lot of times I'll feel like, "Oh, I'm completely healed from that." Whatever type of
Right.
trauma that
Right.
there is. I'm like, "I'm healed from that." And then you can be going about your day and just not even thinking about it, and then a trigger pops up and you're like, "Where did that come from?" And
Yeah.
when I start to ask myself, where did that come from? Sometimes it stems back to some of those things. So I've
Yeah.
wondered, do people ever fully get, I guess, like you get healed, you never really go back to being the same that you were before it all happened.
Yeah. I mean, again, I feel like what we were talking about earlier is that the body, I feel like in some way will always hold on to it a little bit and put some of those like safety precautions up when things start to feel a little off, or maybe something feels a little too close to home as far as like the abuse. But one thing that I feel like really just has helped me so much, because I told you at the beginning, like I couldn't even talk about it. It was physically debilitating to even try to talk to people about what had happened. A lot of it was judged. I thought people were judging me, and I felt ashamed and guilt and all those feelings. But also, I think my body just couldn't process what had happened, and it was just clamping up. But I do feel like writing the memoir and being able to share my story has really helped me heal even more, because I think so much abuse is silence and shame, and I think that that silence protects the abuse. And when we're actually able to come forth and share our story and be honest about what happened to us, that helps. I truly believe that that creates room for healing and helps us be free, find freedom in that abuse.
Yeah, and I think you just dropped the mic. I think that's it right there, is being able to share what has happened and talk about those things does help. And then knowing also that you are helping other people through that. Because
Yeah.
we experience things on this earth, like in our human experience, we experience these things and we ask ourselves, what's it for? Why did I have to go through that thing? What did I learn from it? Of course, that's a personal reflection, but also why did I go through that? And I've often wondered myself through my entire life when I look back on it, and I think I've gone through these things so I can help other people along the way.
Yeah.
And the longer we live, the more experiences we have. And it's amazing because if we're open and vulnerable and authentic and transparent, there's so much room to provide other people space to share what they're walking through. And you have such an immense ability to share, like to help them through that process.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's beautiful, and I'm sure that's what your memoir is, and helping people get through everything that they're going through. But I do want you to talk a little bit about that memoir, and if someone were to pick that up, what can they expect to gain from that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, I mean, I feel like writing the memoir, I really wasn't even sure I was going to publish it at first because it felt so much like my journal and my deepest, darkest secrets. And I felt like publishing it was leaving my diary on the school bus for everyone to see, and everyone was going to see my mistakes and the things I did wrong. And I just felt like people were going to pick at me and tear it apart and all this stuff. But I think really ultimately, if someone were to read it, I mean, it is the story of my abusive relationship kind of before, and you can read it and see, like, wow, this person, I understand why she fell for this person and why she wanted to marry him because, it does usually start off when you're in it, at least. Sometimes people on the outside can see differently, but it does kind of start off as this fairy tale. And then obviously it gets into the abuse, and then it's kind of the aftermath. And I talked a little bit about the spiraling and the therapy. And again, all of that stuff is good and therapy is good. But for me, it was really just deep soul searching. And it was, okay, who am I? Who do I want to be? Who does God intend on me being? It's just years of figuring that out and learning and that layered healing. And for anyone listening that, has gone through it or maybe is carrying the aftermath of the abuse, I mean, I think the memoir just validates that what they're going through is real and that their confusion or the delayed healing, that all of that is true and valid, and it all makes sense, even though sometimes the things that we're experiencing don't seem to make sense. And there's that cognitive dissonance that we talked about, and that they're not weak, right? That they're, even if they're experiencing something or that they choose to stay because it's too hard to get out at the moment, that they're not weak for that, and they're not broken. There's still healing, and that no one can judge you on your own timeline of healing. I truly believe, because I can speak to it myself, that there really is joy and safety and laughter and all the beautiful things that anyone would ever want to experience in life after the fact.
So if someone wanted to get their hands on this memoir, like they think that it would help them and they want to read it, where would they find it?
Yeah, so pretty much anywhere books are sold, Amazon and Barnes and Noble are going to be your best bet. There's the ebook version and the paperback version as well. So again, it's called Everything I Might Have Missed. And the title, I'll tell you just really quick, just stems from the fact that I'm living the life now that if I would have stayed in the relationship, there's so much beauty, so much laughter, so much joy that I could have missed.
I love that. I do truly love that. That's powerful. Gosh, Alicia, what a story you have. And I just am grateful that you've chosen to share it here on the podcast, but then also through your book, because I'm positive that it'll impact lives. And the beautiful thing about impacting a life is then you have this ripple effect that it impacts more and more and more. And so I just am so grateful for those that are strong enough to overcome and then share with other people, because I think that's powerful and that's what it's for. turning our pain into purpose. If you had one final thought that you wanted to leave with my audience, especially based on the conversation that we've had today, what would that be?
Yeah, I would just want to tell them that everything that they're experiencing is valid and that their feelings are valid, but also that there's so much more and so much beauty to be had outside of abuse, and that they can work on their own timeline, whatever that looks like, but that there is joy and happiness outside of it.
I love that. Is there anything else that you want to share that maybe we didn't cover or anything before we close up today?
No, I think we had a really great conversation, and I hope that this will really resonate with some of your listeners. Again, if they're experiencing it or they're on the other side and working through the aftermath, I hope that something that I said will resonate with them.
I love that. And I'm positive that it will. And for those of you who are listening, all of her information is going to be in the show notes. How to get your hands on the book, how to get in contact with her, how to follow along her journey. But Alysha, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much, Amber. It's been a pleasure.
Hey there, friend. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending this time here with us on Through the Trauma podcast. Your presence means more than you know. If this episode has spoke to you or gave you hope or made you feel just a little bit less alone, then I would love it if you would take a second, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who truly needs to hear it. Every share, every comment, every listen, it all helps our message get out and reach those who truly need it the most. Healing happens inside of a community, and together we are breaking the silence and creating space for transformation. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You are not alone.